Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're immersing ourselves in some profoundly challenging ideas, really. We're looking at how to measure a truly meaningful existence.
We are. And we're drawing our insights from a summary of John Piper's pretty influential message, Don't Waste Your Life.
And this source, it isn't just offering friendly advice, it's presenting a radical, I'd say, theological blueprint for navigating what it calls the precious and short time we have.
That structural blueprint is absolutely the key today. I mean, the author lays out 6 core arguments, and they're all designed to answer this one massive question. How do we make sure our lives aren't spent on what he calls empty pursuits?
Right.
So our mission for this deep dive is to systematically decode his precise definition of a wasted life.
And by doing that, explore the path he lays out for finding what he promises is lasting purpose and joy.
What?
I see this text as a deliberate confrontation with how we normally measure success today. It's a really strong statement about what the ultimate goal should be. And it's that phrase, precious and short, that just demands immediate, intentional use of our time.
It really does.
And central to this whole thing is a tension we have to put on the table right from the start. What does it actually mean to live for something greater than yourself?
And the other side of that coin.
Yeah, why are the typical societal goals, the things we all strive for, career, family, security, why are those things seen as incapable of delivering this lasting joy?
That tension is the engine that drives the entire message. The author doesn't just, wave these things away as minor issues.
No, not at all.
He judges them as fundamentally insufficient. He even calls them destructive if you pursue them as the main goal.
So if we can't get our heads around that foundational claim about where joy actually comes from, then the rest of it
just falls apart. All the arguments about avoiding comfort, taking risks, living simply, they'll just sound like unnecessary self-denial.
Instead of a necessary pursuit of a higher goal.
That's it. It all, and I mean all of it, hinges on how you define purpose.
Okay, so let's unpack that starting premise then. The author kicks things off with this core challenge. Life is precious and short, so it must not be spent on empty pursuits.
Which immediately sets a very high bar.
It really does. It implies that a lot of activities that we think are normal, even necessary, certain jobs, hobbies, entertainment, might actually get classified as empty under his microscope.
It creates a kind of moral calculus, doesn't it? Where time is this finite, non-renewable resource that you have to deploy perfectly towards one specific outcome.
And that outcome is defined by his very first argument.
Argument 1, living for God's glory. The text is completely unambiguous on this. It says the greatest purpose of life, the absolute highest goal, is to make God look great in everything we do.
That is the necessary starting block for the entire framework, isn't it? It just instantly redirects your focus.
Completely.
I mean, we live in an age that's obsessed with self-actualization, right? Finding your personal truth, maximizing your potential. This framework just says no to all of that.
It rejects that internal search.
The purpose isn't found inside you. It's found in serving this huge external mandate. It's explicitly other-centered.
Precisely. And that reorientation has, profound implications for how you define success and happiness.
How so?
Well, if the ultimate goal is external to glorify God, then all the internal metrics we use, like personal comfort or your job title, or even just feeling good,
They become secondary.
they become secondary or maybe even counterproductive distractions if they pull your resources away from that primary purpose.
And this is where the text gets really direct about the location of happiness.
It does. Here's where the contrast becomes so sharp. The author asserts that true happiness and lasting purpose are derived from God.
And very pointedly, not from the worldly metrics we all chase.
Not from money, not from career success, not from physical comfort. And that strong contrast, that's the bedrock for every single argument that follows.
It sets up this non-negotiable divide between the material and the spiritual source of satisfaction.
That's a great way to put it. On one side, you have this frantic chase for, tangible achievements, the stuff the world tells us will make us happy.
The next promotion, the bigger house.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the text argues that stuff only delivers a momentary hit of gratification. It's fleeting.
And on the other side.
On the other side, you have a deep, lasting satisfaction that comes from a continuous spiritual state. So if you accept the premise that your purpose is to make God look great,
then anything that distracts from that, even if it feels good for a minute, has to be seen as a waste of your limited time.
A profound waste.
Let's dig into that a little more. Why do those external material sources fail, according to this framework? I mean, we all know getting a raise feels good.
Right.
So why does the text say that satisfaction is inherently flawed?
The flaw is in its dependency. It depends on fluctuating external circumstances. We might call it hedonic adaptation, though the source frames it theologically.
You mean like we just get used to things?
We get used to things incredibly quickly. You get the raise, you buy the new car, and for a week, maybe a month, you feel great. But that new car very quickly just becomes the car.
That's the new baseline.
It's the new baseline. The source of happiness decays. And because these things are temporary, they're subject to decay, and they depend on things you can't control, the economy, your health, what other people think, they can never offer lasting joy. You consume them, and they're gone.
So a life spent just accumulating those temporary fixes is, by this definition, a wasted life, because the payoff keeps diminishing, and it forces you into this endless cycle of needing the next thing to get that brief spike of happiness again.
You've nailed it. And that brings us directly to the final argument of the framework, which is argument 6. This is where he really defines joy.
Okay.
The text is very specific. Real joy comes from knowing and loving God. And this joy is presented as fundamentally different from earthly happiness.
Because its source is constant.
Its source is constant, not fluctuating like the stock market or your social status.
So this becomes a kind of filter for your life choices. The source material forces this very clear, very severe contrast with what it sees as false sources of happiness.
Like entertainment, possessions, or even validation from people. They're labeled as substitutes. Pleasant, maybe, but they don't lead anywhere permanently.
Let's talk about entertainment for a second. The modern world is built on it. Streaming, social media, constant stimulation.
Right, and if you pursue those things mainly for comfort or distraction, the text suggests you are trading an opportunity for lasting purpose for just a moment of fleeting passive pleasure.
So that time you invest watching a whole season of a show in one weekend.
That time delivers no residual or eternal value within this framework. That makes it a classic example of an empty pursuit. The cost isn't just the hours you spent, it's the opportunity cost of what those hours could have accomplished in service to this greater purpose.
So if I'm pursuing a complex financial portfolio, or I spend all my evenings binge-watching shows, or I'm constantly seeking likes and affirmation online, those things give me a temporary hit.
They do.
But according to the spiritual framework, they are structurally incapable of delivering lasting joy. They're just too fragile, too fleeting, and way too self-focused.
That is the critical distinction. Temporary happiness comes from external factors, things you consume, possess, or achieve. It's fleeting because those factors change, they fail, they vanish.
Whereas lasting joy.
Lasting joy in this framework comes from an internal spiritual state, the state of knowing and loving God. That state, because it's centered on something that's presented as unchanging, is immune to market crashes, personal failures, and physical suffering. That's what makes the joy truly lasting.
It fundamentally redefines the currency of life, doesn't it? We're so used to trading time for money or effort for success.
Oh.
This text suggests we should be trading everything, our time, our resources, our comfort, for this deeper, unwavering satisfaction that goes beyond our material circumstances.
It does. And so the constant pursuit of consumption or passive entertainment becomes a crystal clear indicator of a life being wasted on small, temporary things.
It's a real challenge to a very deep cultural assumption.
What is that?
That filling your life with good things, a successful business, a happy family, fun hobbies, automatically makes it a good life.
Right. If the primary purpose is defined by God's glory, then any good thing that diverts significant time, energy, and resources away from that primary purpose,
Especially if you're just pursuing it for your own comfort or pleasure.
then it ultimately gets classified as wasteful. It's the intention behind the action that determines its value in this system.
Okay, that sets a really powerful stage by defining purpose in this theological way. So now we have to move from that high-level principle to the practical behavioral critique.
This is where it gets very concrete.
The source material identifies specific lifestyle choices that it says lead directly to this wasted life.
And this is where the author becomes incredibly specific and, I'd say, directly challenges the cultural consensus of the Western world. This is argument 2, the warning against comfort and security.
It feels like a bold attack on the default life plan for most people.
It is. The source focuses so intensely on a critique of the American dream life, and it categorizes the desire for it as being inherently safe and comfortable.
which feels revolutionary because safety, stability, comfort, those are held up as signs of responsible, even ethical adult behavior. So what's the central problem with prioritizing safety?
The author identifies the pursuit of security as an idol. It's a competing, ultimate value that demands you avoid risk, hoard money, and focus on yourself.
All of which directly contradict the mandates of service and risk we're going to talk about.
Exactly. The text just flat out labels this pursuit of a comfortable life as the wasted life. And he details exactly what components people are focusing on exclusively.
He identifies four specific elements that people make their defining objectives: career, money, security, and retirement. I think we need to spend some serious time breaking down why focusing exclusively on these four things is considered such a profound waste. Let's start with career.
Okay, career. It becomes problematic when its main purpose is your own self-elevation. If your career choices are driven purely by maximizing your status or generating excess money for your own personal pile,
Or just achieving a level of comfort that insulates you from the world's problems.
right, then the career itself becomes an obstacle to the ultimate purpose. It stops being a means of service and instead becomes this monument to your own achievement. The question isn't if you have a career, but who the career primarily serves.
But hold on. Intentional service and generosity, they require resources, right? If you just reject the idea of a successful, well-paying career, doesn't that undermine your ability to give generously, which is a key action item later on? How does the source deal with that tension?
That's an excellent articulation of the tension. And the author resolves it by hammering on intentionality. The career has to be redefined.
Okay.
You pursue an income level not for the comfort it buys you, but for the resources it provides for others. If the main output of your career, the money, is immediately redirected outward towards service and giving, then the career is justified.
But if the money is just captured and put into a fence for personal security, a bigger house, a cushier retirement, more luxuries.
Then the career is just a vehicle for the wasted life. The intention is what makes all the difference.
Okay, that makes sense. Moving on to money, which is obviously so tightly linked to security, accumulating wealth is so deeply ingrained in our idea of being a responsible person, planning for the future, providing for your family.
The problem, according to this text, arises when the pursuit of money becomes the central, all-consuming activity, when it displaces the explicit commands to serve, share, and especially to give generously.
So if money is only for personal security and comfort,
it becomes this massive psychological barrier to the bold risks that purposeful living requires. If you have a huge personal safety net, you're just far less likely to sacrifice anything meaningful for some external, risky purpose. Money stops being a tool for service and becomes a hedge against needing faith. It promotes self-reliance.
Which leads us right to security. Security is that desire for safety, for eliminating unpredictability. We buy insurance, we build up savings, we choose stable career paths, and yet the source sees this as a trap. Why?
Because security demands control. The moment your top priority is minimizing unpredictability, you are by definition minimizing opportunities for faith, for risk, and for the radical use of your resources.
And the purposeful life, as we'll see, requires those risks.
It requires risks of loss, risks of discomfort, risks of failure. If your main goal is perfect security, you will always retreat from an opportunity for meaningful impact if it poses any threat to your stability. Security becomes the wall you build around yourself, and it prevents any outward flow of service.
And then there's retirement. It's presented as the ultimate expression of that comfort-seeking path. The traditional idea of retirement is the big payoff, right? The time you finally stop working and, start living entirely for yourself. Leisure, travel.
And that, in the author's view, is the definitive, tragic mark of the wasted life.
Wow.
The pursuit of a comfortable retirement is seen as the end goal of small living. A life spent focusing on accumulation and self-preservation for 40 years, with the goal of self-indulgence for the final 20.
A life structured around the self?
Entirely.
Yeah.
Instead of around service. The source suggests that purposeful living should continue until you die. There's no spiritual justification for just withdrawing into comfort because you hit age 65.
The implicit question is,
if you are hoarding resources now for comfort later, why aren't you deploying them for service today when the need is immediate and your time is short?
This is a radical redefinition of financial planning. So just to be crystal clear for you listening, the critique isn't that having a job or saving money is wrong.
Not at all.
It's that focusing only on these four pursuits, career, money, security, retirement, making them the defining self-focused goal of your entire life. That's what constitutes the waste.
Exactly right. They're necessary parts of a responsible life, but they cannot be the primary purpose. If the primary purpose is maximizing your personal comfort and minimizing your personal risk, it just inherently contradicts the theological mandate of service and glory.
I see the logic there. So why is comfort and security the very thing that traps people? Why does the safety become the cage?
Because comfort is just so seductive. It provides immediate, temporary satisfaction, and it lulls us into complacency. It's incredibly difficult to justify a radical act of service or generosity when you're constantly comparing that act against a comfortable alternative.
Can you give an example?
Sure. Let's say I have, $20,000 earmarked for my retirement fund, and a genuine need presents itself that requires that money right now. A family in my community loses their home in a fire.
Okay.
The comfortable mind, the mind focused on security, will always rationalize holding on to the money. It will say, that's my future, I worked hard for that, there are other ways to help.
But the intentional life
Serving others, giving generously, often requires you to give up that control and embrace unpredictability, sometimes even financial hardship. Comfort and intentional service are presented as fundamentally incompatible masters. Prioritizing your personal security until you're 65 is precisely what prevents the immediate bold action that the purposeful life demands.
It's a complete inversion of what society tells us is smart. What society calls sensible planning, the Source calls a spiritual trap.
That's it.
Yeah.
It's the choice to live defensively, always protecting your assets, rather than living offensively, intentionally deploying them for a higher external return.
And the return isn't a bigger 401k.
The return is lasting joy and the fulfillment of the ultimate purpose. So if the constant accumulation of comfort gets in the way of achieving that joy, then comfort is, by definition, the greatest enemy of the intentional life. It's a subtle, quiet destruction through ease, not a loud destruction through vice.
Okay, so if the comfortable life is wasted, the logical next question is, what should we embrace instead? Now we shift away from that defensive posture of security and toward the concepts of risk-taking and intentional living. This is the positive blueprint for action.
And this transition is so critical. If argument 2 is the big warning, don't chase comfort, then argument 3 is the immediate corrective action, taking risks for a purpose.
Yeah.
This is the explicit antidote to that paralyzing pursuit of security.
The source material is fantastic here because it defines two contrasting types of fear. One is the fear to be avoided, the fear of failure, of embarrassment, of losing money.
The one we all feel.
Right. But the other is presented as the healthy, motivating fear, and that is the fear of wasting opportunities to do meaningful things for God and others.
This is profound psychological reframing. Most people are stopped cold by the fear of failure, the risk of looking stupid or losing money or just disrupting their comfortable life. But the text argues that the real anxiety, the true fear, should be focused on the opposite. The crushing realization that you might get to the end of your life and see that you were too cautious, too comfortable, too focused on your own security to have made any real difference.
So that fear of wasting your life, rather than the fear of losing things in your life, should be the primary motivator.
The overriding motivator. And the implication is clear. If your focus is on that ultimate external purpose, then the failure of one specific earthly venture, a mission trip that doesn't go as planned, a business setback, a financial loss, it's less significant than the failure to even try in the first place.
And the source material explicitly says that living by faith sometimes requires bold risks.
We have to spend a minute defining what a bold risk actually means in this context, especially as a rejection of that American dream trap.
Okay.
It is the direct opposite of a calculated insured investment. A bold risk might mean moving your family to a place of need or spending the majority of your savings on someone else's crisis.
Or walking away from a stable career track because it's just consuming too much time and energy that should be used elsewhere.
Exactly. It is completely incompatible with the pursuit of a safe, comfortable retirement and a massive 401k.
But how does the source suggest we figure out if a risk is bold enough or if it's worthy? Is it just about making yourself as uncomfortable as possible?
No, it's not about discomfort for its own sake. It's about maximizing purposeful impact relative to your personal cost. The source implies a risk is worthy when the intended outcome is service or advancing the ultimate purpose.
And when the potential loss would genuinely disrupt the life of comfort and security you've been warned against.
That's the key. If the risk only uses your surplus funds, your fund money, it's not truly bold. A bold risk is one that puts your own perceived security on the line for someone else's need. It's acting on the conviction that the external purpose is more trustworthy than your financial portfolio.
Which brings us to argument 5, making your life count. Intentional living. So if risk is the method, intentionality is the daily discipline. The author challenges readers to live every moment for something greater than yourself.
And crucially, this isn't some abstract philosophical idea. The source provides a very specific, actionable, 5-point blueprint for intentional living. These are the daily habits that make that outward, risk-embracing focus a reality.
Let's break down each of these 5 actions in detail. First up, serve others. This seems like the practical, minute-by-minute application of putting other people's needs above your own desire for comfort.
Service is the fundamental counterpoint to self-focus. It means looking beyond your own immediate circle of needs and actively seeking out external needs to meet. It could be in your neighborhood or across the globe.
And if your time, energy, and resources are constantly flowing outward to meet those needs,
you physically cannot simultaneously be hoarding them for your own personal security and accumulating them for a distant retirement. Service mandates that you deploy your life now.
Okay, second action. Share your faith. This is the outward relational part of the ultimate purpose we defined back in section 1. Actively communicating the source of that lasting joy.
This isn't just a passive belief system, it's an active mandate. If you truly believe the source of lasting joy is external and spiritual, then the most generous thing you can do is share the method for achieving that joy with others.
And that takes time, vulnerability, and often social risk.
The risk of being rejected or misunderstood, for sure. But since the whole purpose is tied to glorifying God, communicating the reason for that glory becomes a non-negotiable part of the deal.
Third, give generously. This is the material, financial manifestation of the intentional life. It's the direct, measurable contradiction to the money-hoarding part of the American dream trap.
Yes, and this is a zero-sum game against personal accumulation. Generosity in this context has to be sacrificial to be considered intentional. It has to be at a level that, if you do it consistently, it will impact the timeline or the size of your comfortable retirement.
So if your generosity only comes from surplus income money, that doesn't really impact your long-term security plans.
The author would argue it fails the test of intentional living. It doesn't represent a real risk or a true redirection of resources away from the self.
This financial mandate leads perfectly into the 4th action item. Live simply. This feels like the enabling behavior for everything else. Explain that critical link.
Living simply is the tactical starvation of the wasted life. Think about it. The wasted life thrives on complexity and consumption.
Bigger houses, more gadgets, more subscriptions.
A constant need for maintenance and management of all your stuff. This complexity is expensive. It makes you need a higher income, work longer hours, and be more committed to that career. Living simply breaks that entire cycle.
How so?
By reducing the complexity and expense of your own life, you immediately free up 2 precious resources. Time, because you don't have to work as much or maintain as much, and money.
And that surplus of time and money is then available for the other mandates.
Exactly. Particularly for giving generously and serving others. It's not an aesthetic choice, like minimalism for the sake of looking cool. It's a strategic choice to maximize your resource availability for an external purpose.
I find that connection between living simply and giving generously really fascinating. It's like a powerful feedback loop that actively starves the consumer model.
Absolutely. The consumer-focused American dream depends on perpetual upgrades. You move to a better neighborhood, you get a new car, you plan more expensive vacations, all in the name of comfort and security.
And that whole structure requires a high income or a high debt level, which locks you into that long-term career focus.
Right. Living simply means you reject the perceived necessity of those upgrades. If you need less, you can earn less, which frees up your time for service. And most crucially, if you consume less, the difference between what you need and what you earn can be redirected entirely to generous giving.
So this intentional poverty of consumption fuels radical generosity.
Which is a necessary component of the purposeful life as defined by the source material.
And finally, the 5th action. Use your talents for good. This emphasizes that your professional skills aren't just tools for building your own comfortable career.
It recontextualizes your job for you. If you're a talented software developer, your skill isn't primarily for securing a fat retirement package. It's to build systems or tools that enable service or generosity. If you're an expert plumber, your skill can be deployed to serve communities that can't afford market rates.
So your talent is a tool, a piece of capital that has to be directed toward that external purpose.
Not just a personal asset whose main function is to fund your own accumulating comfort.
So the purposeful life in this framework, it isn't measured by personal accumulation or career height. It's measured by intentional deployment, distribution, and risk-taking. It's a constant outward flow.
It is. It's a dynamic, risk-managed investment portfolio where the investment is your entire life and the return is lasting joy and the fulfillment of the ultimate purpose. This system is designed to create discomfort because discomfort is the proving ground for a joy that isn't dependent on your circumstances. And that leads us to the most difficult argument of all.
We've established the definition of joy, the clear warning against comfort, and the positive call to risk and intentional action. Now we have to tackle the most difficult concept in the source material, finding meaning even in pain and suffering.
This is argument 4, and it forces a complete reevaluation of pain. I mean, suffering is the very thing that the pursuit of comfort argument 2 is designed to eliminate.
Right. In the modern comfort-driven worldview, suffering is just meaningless. It's a random, unfortunate thing that you have to medicate or avoid at all costs.
But this text fundamentally challenges that assumption. It posits that suffering is, in fact, purposeful when it is used to show God's strength and hope.
That's a vital redefinition. So suffering in this framework becomes an opportunity to execute the core purpose from Section 1, making God look great.
Exactly. Think of it this way. If you're comfortable and happy because you have wealth and security, your strength could be attributed to your own hard work and your resources.
People would say, of course he's happy, look at his life.
Right. But if you are suffering, financially ruined, physically ill, socially persecuted, and you still maintain this profound hope and inner joy, the source argues that that hope must be coming from something external and enduring.
So it proves that your joy is not dependent on your circumstances.
Precisely. The suffering itself isn't the purpose, but your response to the suffering is the demonstration of purpose. Enduring profound hardship while maintaining hope becomes this public, powerful testament to a strength that is outside of your own earthly situation.
The source material reinforces this idea that even in pain, God can work through your life, meaning your pain can become a tool for the ultimate purpose.
It integrates suffering into the larger narrative. The willingness to accept, endure, and show hope in the face of despair when all earthly metrics of comfort and security have failed. That becomes the most powerful testament possible to the source of that lasting joy.
This analysis really synthesizes all the previous points perfectly. If the whole purpose is to make God look great, and you've already intentionally rejected the path of security and comfort,
From argument 2.
then facing unavoidable pain with radical hope is the ultimate demonstration that your joy truly does not come from your possessions or your entertainment or your physical safety.
It retroactively validates the entire claim of argument 6, that joy comes from an external spiritual source. If your joy was dependent on comfort, suffering would instantly destroy it.
But the fact that hope and strength can persist through suffering, according to the source, proves that the foundation of your purpose is rooted in something external and unshakable.
It shifts suffering from being a sign of personal failure or just bad luck to being a necessary instrument of testimony. It becomes a deep part of the purposeful life.
And it also greatly justifies the need for taking those bold risks from argument 3. Well, if suffering itself can be purposeful and result in this greater glory, then the fear of the temporary suffering that might come from taking a risk, financial loss, physical discomfort, social rejection, that fear pales in comparison to the feel of wasting the opportunity to demonstrate your ultimate purpose.
That's a great point. It elevates the entire discussion beyond simple self-help. If the comfortable life is a waste, and the purposeful life requires risks, then the existence of unavoidable suffering provides the ultimate test case.
A test case for what?
For whether your joy is truly lasting and sourced internally, or if it's just temporary and dependent entirely on your external circumstances. The ability to show hope under duress is presented as the very pinnacle of intentional living.
We have covered a significant amount of challenging ground today, really systematically distilling a powerful, dense message into its core operational principles.
We have.
And I think the short version of the central mandate is pretty clear. Don't waste your life on small, accumulating things. Live for a purpose that matters. Honoring God, loving others, taking bold risks, and serving until the very end.
And for you, the listener, as you're preparing to integrate this knowledge, the real value lies in understanding the critical contrasts presented in this source material. These aren't just abstract points. They are operational choices that dictate the trajectory of your life.
Let's quickly summarize those two critical contrasts we spent so much time on. First, the contrast between the fear of failure versus the fear of a wasted opportunity.
This requires a total paradigm shift. I mean, we are conditioned by society to fear personal loss, discomfort, and social failure. And that often leads us to choose the comfortable, secure path.
Right.
The text demands we replace that anxiety with the fear of a small, comfortable, and ultimately meaningless life. A life where you ignored profound opportunities for service and risk-taking simply because you wanted to preserve yourself.
And the second major contrast, that profound, unavoidable choice between comfort and security, the wasted life versus intentional risk and simplicity, the purposeful life.
This is the required behavioral change. Comfort demands accumulation, defensive assets, and minimizing risk. Those four pillars of the American dream trap we talked about.
Career, money, security, retirement.
Whereas purpose demands simplification of your needs, which is living simply, and maximization of outward distribution, giving generously, serving others. These are fundamentally competing life trajectories. The text warns unequivocally that you cannot pursue both as your ultimate goals.
So what does this all mean for the person listening right now grappling with these challenging mandates? If living for something greater than yourself requires these bold risks and an intentional rejection of the security that society rewards, what is the single biggest risk that this deep dive now highlights for you?
Well, we detailed how the focus on money, security, and retirement, the building of that self-serving financial nest egg, is the definitive mark of the wasted life. The source material suggests that the greatest risk is not in what you might lose by taking action, but in what you lose by choosing safety and delaying purpose.
So the single biggest risk is?
Therefore, the single biggest risk, the point where the rubber really meets the road between comfort and lasting joy, would be the intentional sacrifice of a major portion of that financial safety net today. Giving away a substantial portion of a planned retirement fund, or walking away from a stable career path to serve, knowing that your immediate future security is now dependent on a source outside of your own accumulation. That is the question of faith and action the source material leaves you with. That is the choice you must explore.